And hello. Hello, everyone. So it's a quick, short little video just to document this article that I saw. So let me bring it up and then we just go through it. It wasn't a planned session, so let's just see how it goes. Um, so I came across this article, which is to do, of course, with the presidential election petition tribunal that's just coming now with the verdict and some of the feedbacks that we are getting to that to those verdicts. So this is some of the feedbacks, especially coming from the senior advocate of Nigeria. So from the senior advocate of Nigeria quarters. So let's see what the senior advocates of Nigeria have to say about the verdict that just came in. So let's just get straight into it. So PEPC judgment unassailable, thorough, difficult to overturn. So these are headline attributed to SANs. So SANs, which is to say a body of our senior advocate of Nigeria. So yes, the headline especially struck me. So I just thought to do a little snapshot video on it. So PEPC judgment unassailable, thorough, difficult to overturn. So you see now this last bit of the headline is what's actually inspired this video, because of course you know that a lot of the actors within that decision space are threatening to take it all the way to the Supreme Court. So this is a cursory warning to that space, difficult to overturn. So now let's now see how the senior advocate arrived at this. Following the judgment of the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal, PEPT, on Wednesday, in the petition filed by Atiku Abubakar and the People's Democratic Party, PDP, Peter Obi and the Labour Party, LP, and the Allied People's Movement, APM, challenging the declaration of Bola Tinubu of the All Progressive Congress, APC, winner of the February 25 presidential poll. Some senior advocates of Nigeria have hailed the decision of the court. In their reaction, the senior lawyers described the decision of the tribunal as correct, true. Let's take that again. In their reactions, the senior lawyers described the decisions of the tribunal as correct, true reflection of the principles of law and in accordance with the established principles of law that governs and underpins election litigations in Nigeria. And then the first senior advocate that speaks to this space is quite striking, the name, just to indicate where he comes from. A senior lawyer, Dr. Joseph Nwobike. So, I mean, of course, you already know from the name where he comes from. A senior lawyer, Dr. Joseph Nwobike, SAN, described the verdict of the Presidential Election Tribunal, which upheld the election of President Bola Tinubu as a true reflection of the principles of law that govern and underpin election litigations in Nigeria. So there it is right there. So even a senior lawyer from the Southeast, you know, the law is the law, you know, and the law is not the sentimentality of it. And the law is not a series of wayward youths screeching and squealing on Twitter, telling us that all eyes on the judiciary. All eyes, even all asses can be on the judiciary, but the law will still be the law. So you can have your forehead on the judiciary, or you're behind on the judiciary, but the law will remain the law. He commended the diligence, undaunted thoroughness, and professionalism of the 5-member bench led by Justice Haruna Samani in interpreting the law. He, however, said parties who are dissatisfied are at liberty to proceed to the Supreme Court to test the decision of the tribunal. The learned justices on the tribunal's bench examined and resolved all the issues of law and fact in favor of the respondent after considering the evidence-led and the applicable laws. For instance, the tribunal decided that the second respondent was qualified to contest the presidential election and that the order for forfeiture made by the court in Illinois, United States of America, was not a conviction within the contemplation of the provisions of Section 137 of the Constitution of Nigeria. So now, the level of unprofessionalism of the Peter Obi and Atiku legal team is something that that's just reading what Kaiser was saying. No, the level of professionalism of the Peter Obi and Atiku legal teams is something that has to be called to question, because they seem to have just led all of their presentations off the back of the noise making on Twitter and Instagram without any backing in thoroughness. And this is what we're seeing. So because they see some headlines that $460,000 was forfeited in Illinois, they immediately go and present that in court without any fact check or substance. And this is why the court was so irritable in that judgment. For instance, the tribunal decided that the second respondent was qualified to contest the presidential election and that the order for forfeiture made by the court in Illinois, United States of America, was not a conviction within the contemplation of the provisions of Section 137 of the Constitution of Nigeria. The tribunal held that the petitioners failed to prove that the president was convicted in the United States of America as alleged in their respective petitions. So they didn't even go to do any sort form of investigation to back up that presentation with anything of substance. They simply grabbed a headline from Twitter Space and presented it in court that, look, people are saying they forfeited $400,000 drug money. Convict him. This is the level that we're in, and a lot of these people purport to be senior advocates of Nigeria. The tribunal held that the petitioner failed to present that the president was convicted in the United States of America as alleged in their respective petitions. The tribunal equally decided that INEC has the discretion on how to transmit election results. So you can just see how feeble, and we had said all the way through, you can all see how feeble and weak the presentation is. And that again reflecting in the irritation, let me put it that way. I was going to say irritabiliness. I'm not sure if I've just coined a new word. But that reflected in the irritation that you could hear from the bench as they were reading out the judgments. They were really quite annoyed that this was being presented to them and they were being forced to consider this. In my view, the judgment accords with the established principles of law that govern and underpin election litigations in Nigeria. I believe that the parties will proceed to the Supreme Court to test the decisions of the tribunal. I will encourage all parties and their supporters to abide by the decisions of the court in this and all regards. I must confess that the judgments delivered by the tribunal are unassailable. So there it is right there. And there, you see, this one now sentence stands alone to tell you that everything now has ended with that verdict by the tribunal. Because what these senior lawyers, and please pay attention to senior lawyers rather than your sentiments and emotions or some random nonsense that you read on Google written by some empty head. So these are senior lawyers now telling you now that 2023 is fait accompli. Fait accompli, a completed faith, a done deal. It's over. The fat lady has sung. This is what they're saying to you. And it's reflecting in the sentence. I must confess that the judgment delivered by the tribunal are And the word that you are looking for now is the one that I'm highlighting now, unassailable. Unassailable. It cannot be reached beyond. If you want to get your dictionary out, if you're not literate enough to know what unassailable means, then get your dictionary out. So I must confess that the judgments delivered by the tribunal are unassailable. The basis for the resolution of all the issues of law and facts formulated by the parties are consistent with the body of judicial precedents in on all the points. So yes, that probably confused me just as much as it confused you. But let's carry on. The decisions, actually, let me take it from the preceding paragraph and then run through. I must confess that the judgments delivered by the tribunal are unassailable. The basis for the resolution of all the issues of law and facts are formulated. All the issues of law and facts formulated by the parties are consistent with the body of judicial precedents on all the points. The decisions are therefore correct. However, the petitioners can still pursue their respective remedies to the Supreme Court as is customary in electoral disputes of this magnitude. I will want to appreciate the learned justices for the rare industry applied in writing and delivering the judgment. This is rare in the annals of modern judicial history in the common law jurisdictions. The decisions will, for a long time to come, serve as a veritable guide for lawyers, administrators, and politicians involved in electoral processes in Nigeria and perhaps beyond. It was quite a piece of work, you know, for all the criticisms and condemnations, often instances justified, that will levy against these judicial spaces. The work done by the presidential petition tribunal a couple of days ago, it was a piece of work. It was a piece of art. It was art, you know. It was Picasso. It was Rembrandt. You know, 10, 12 hours of thorough, high-level jurisprudence, justice delivering, going through the minutiae of every single spurious and vague petition levied, presented to them, and applying law to justify decisions over a 10-hour unbroken, high-functioning justice delivery jurisprudence. I'm not quite sure that has ever been seen in the history of mankind. So we have to applaud that. We have to applaud that. Also speaking in an interview, 85-year-old Chief Robert Clark, SAN, who had witnessed many tribunals in the course of his career, described the judgment as the best the country has ever had. So there it is. There is no room to run anymore. Of course, that doesn't stop anything from the obedience and all of these, brain fade elements that like to screech and squeal. They'll still, it doesn't, the fact and truth doesn't get in the way of anything that they do in those quarters. They just subsist in their mesh as they cannibalize themselves one by one. So they will continue to do that circle dance around whatever tribal narrative that agitates their petty little minds. But the people of note that know what is going on, and the industry experts that understand law and jurisprudence, they are telling you that this piece of judgment will stand in the archives as a gold standard. Also speaking in an interview, 85-year-old Chief Robert Clark, SAN, who had, listen to this, who had witnessed many tribunals in the course of his career, described the judgment as the best the country has ever had. So there it is. There it is. The will of the people continue to be upheld, of course. Tinubu won by a landslide, and he will rule by a landslide. Chief Clark, whilst reacting to the Labour Party's council's assertion that if care is not taken, electoral jurisprudence may disappear in Nigeria, stated that I don't know where he learned his jurisprudence from, but I can assure you that is a fallen man's take. So that is a fallen man's take. So I cannot really rephrase it better than that. A fallen man's take. These two judgments I have heard today are the best judgments I think this country has ever had. It is a good thing that these two judgments today are being broadcasted live so that you and I and those who are not knowledgeable in law will understand what is at stake in the country. These two judgments have greatly enriched the jurisprudence of this country, despite or in spite of what the labor might say. And I can tell you that I can boast of learning tonight what I normally teach my young lawyers, that you win or lose on your pleadings. The two judgments, especially Atiko's case, shows you that pleadings were the cause of the loss. In Atiko's case, the pleadings were rough and inadequate. He said, Chief Yomi Aliyu SAN on his part, the judge did a good job and were thorough in their decisions. He added that I was involved in the matter, and as such, people might see me as biased. However, one thing is certain, the judgment was thorough. So I think everybody can coalesce behind that statement. That judgment was thorough. Whether you favor it or whether you disagree with the veracity of it, whether you think it was vested in law as you understand it, according to the laws that Google told you or not, the one thing you have to say is that it was thorough. And when they say it was thorough, it went through every piece of item presented to the court and the law was applied. So that thoroughness. I had at one time or the other appeared before these judges at either the High Court or Court of Appeal. They are renowned perfectionists. They must have been deliberately and consciously selected by the president of the Court of Appeal with a fine-tooth comb. The judgment is like sculptures in the hand of master craftsmen. So that just goes to the Picasso analogy that I made earlier on. It was concise, accurate, and all-embracing. It will be a recurrent nightmare to lawyers who think cases could be won by intimidating and or blackmailing judges. The so-called obedience not only placed billboards intimidating the judiciary as represented by the justices in the petition, but they went as far as threatening members of their immediate families, including their grandchildren. Yes, of course, they are noted for that. They located the shop of one of the justices. That will be the shop of his daughter, not the shop of the justice himself. They located the shop of one of the justices at Wuse in Abuja and told her that they would buy all her wares out in the day if her father gave judgment to their candidates, or woe betide her if otherwise. These are all on public media. No doubt, these people do not know the type of justices on the panel. The country owes them appreciation for not only putting their lives on the line, but those of their families. The judgment is locus classicus. So a locus classic, so a legal classic is essentially what that means in Latin. The judgment is locus classicus, the first of its type. The 12 hours of its reading is unprecedented in my 39 years of practice. The industry is unparalleled. The rendition is sonorous. It's sonorous, like a musical sort of thing. The rendition is sonorous, like a mother's lullaby, forcing some petitioners' counsel to slumber, whilst the input, as in exposition of principles of law is legendary. One could not expect less because the three gladiators employed the services of the best lawyers in the country, with President Bola Ahmed Tinubu having 60 of them, led by Primus inter pares, Chief Wole Olanipekun SAN himself. So Wole Olanipekun is now Wole Olanipekun is now standing out as the senior advocate of senior advocates within the Nigerian sphere. So this is what we're seeing now. Wole Olanipekun Wole Olanipekun is now standing out as the senior advocate of senior advocates in Nigeria. So why am I saying that? This was the same guy that Buhari used to defeat Atiku in 2019. So this is not the same guy that Tinubu is using to flog Atiku yet again, and this time his man Friday Peter Obi, now in 2023. So he seems to be the go-to guy in presidential petition litigations in Nigeria. One could not expect less because the three gladiators employed the One could not expect less because the three gladiators employed the services of the best lawyers in the country, with President Bola Ahmed Tinubu having 60 of them, led by Primus inter pares, the chief Wole Olanipekun SAN himself. If I advise the losers not to go to the Supreme Court, it will be a disservice not only to democracy but also development of the jurisprudence of elections in the country. Those new principles enunciated in the judgment must be tested and finalized by the apex court. So those principles enunciated in the yes, those new principles enunciated in the judgment must be tested and finalized by the apex court. So one particular principle enunciated is Abuja now not having a special status and essentially being considered for reasons of jurisprudence and law and more to it election as just another state within the Nigerian paradigm. So that is what the appeal court said. But that is still subject to litigation unless it is affirmed and firmed up by the Supreme Court. So for that reason alone, everybody is anxious and eager for Peter Obi to be fleeced of even more money by the lawyers as they encourage him to go to the Supreme Court. So we can at least firm up that Abuja space so it doesn't constitute a nuisance in elections to come. If the losers do not go to the Supreme Court, it will be a disservice. If I advise the losers not to go to the Supreme Court, it will be a disservice not only to democracy, but also development of the jurisprudence of elections in the country. Those new principles enunciated in the judgment must be tested and finalized by the apex court. In all, justice has been served and done, he reiterated. So that piece of work, I defy any court in Nigeria, Supreme or otherwise, to overturn that body of work that we just saw by the appeal court. It will take some doing. In fact, it's unassailable, as they said. Let me just show you the headline again. It's unassailable, as they said. PEPC judgment unassailable, thorough, and difficult to overturn. I would change that difficult to impossible. In all, justice has been served and done, he reiterated. Dave Ajay Tomobi, a former chairman of Ikeja MBA, said, I believe that their lordships took their time to carry out detailed examination of the cases presented by the parties yesterday because they are aware of the hullabaloo some ethnic social media warlords have created. To me, they did a good job, so much that the apex court will have a great problem overturning the verdict of the lower court. They refused to summarize their findings so as to foreclose speculations by the fanatical supporters of a candidate. So I wonder who that candidate is. So it says the fanatical supporters. Let me highlight it. Where is it? Hold on. So yeah, I want you to insert who the candidate is here. So it says they refuse to summarize their findings so as to foreclose speculations by the fanatical supporters of a candidate. So who do you think those fanatical supporters are? Do you think they are referencing or supporters, by the way, or who do you think they are? On his part, however, Ebun Olu Adegboruwa SAN said it is a period for sober reflection, adding that the verdict could not have been otherwise. So all of the legal brains, all the legal minds in Nigeria, they seem to concur with what Ogbeni has always explained to us on this platform, that the totality of everything that Peter will be presented at this petition and has been his presentation all through his life, a total nonsense. According to him, the verdict of the Presidential Election Petition Court was not totally unexpected, given the stark realities facing us as a nation and the state of the law. The principles of presumption of regularity of elections and that of substantial conformity make it extremely difficult to prosecute elections successfully. So now, I would not say that that is a criticism, by the way, and I'm not quite sure where Ebun Olugboruwa or whatever his name is, I'm not quite sure where he's going with but if you look at this, it says, let me just highlight it. Pardon me. It says, the principles of presumption of regularity of elections. So the principles of presumptions of regularity of elections. So those are fanciful and vague words. So let me just bring it down to pedestrian level. So let me bring it down to pedestrian level. What that essentially means is that the law recognizes that INEC is right and correct until you prove otherwise. Do you understand? So what that essentially tells you is that the law is on the side of INEC until you prove otherwise. Because INEC, of course, is a governmental institution mandated to carry out a piece of work. They carried out that piece of work through their understanding of the remit that has been assigned them by the government. So that is the presumption of regularity. So there are regulations in form and there are processes applicable. So INEC then, in the course of following those processes, arrive at a destination to make a declaration. So the court presumes that that was done, and for them to then arrive at that destination to make that declaration. So that is the presumption of conformity. So you now disputing that those processes were not gone through to arrive at whatever destination, and the destination arrived at was wrong, and then the pronouncement and announcement by INEC was wrong also. You taking that stance, you have then to prove in law, rather than the law assuming or presuming that INEC did wrong. You have to prove that they did wrong. So that essentially is a loose translation of presumption of regularity of elections. So that's one. And then the second part again, that what's his name again? I should know how to pronounce this. It's a Yoruba name. Ebun Olu Adegboruwa. So the second point that Ebun Olu Adegboruwa seemed to somewhat be casting somewhat an passion-like looks at. So this now, it says that the substantial conformity and that of substantial conformity make it extremely difficult to prosecute election successfully. So there are two elements that the SAN is highlighting as difficulties within the election jurisprudence. So he's talked about a presumption of regularity of elections, which we've addressed, and he's now also talking about substantial conformity. So now, when you take a case to court to challenge an election, so let's say, for instance, the election is 10. If you are able to prove that there were two faults, and you can successfully prove that there are two faults, the court will still maintain and sustain that the elections was done properly. If you are able, we're using an example of a scale of 10 just to make the example. If you are able to prove that there were three faults, the court will still maintain that that election was true and proper. So this is essentially what this means, that of substantial conformity. So the election doesn't have to be 100% correct. It doesn't even have to be 80% correct, but it has to be substantially, fundamentally correct to reflect the will of the people. And that is what substantial conformity means. So those are the hurdle spaces that you have to overturn in order for you to overturn an election. So you have to overturn the presumption of regularity to establish that there are irregularities within the electoral process. And then not only do you have to establish that there were irregularities within the electoral process, you have to establish that those irregularities substantially impacted on the elections in order then to produce a result that does not reflect the will of the people. So those are the two spaces, and this is what Ebun Adegboruwa or something or the other, whatever his name is referencing. So let's take it from the top again, and we try and speed through it. On his part, however, Ebun Olu Adegboruwa SAN said it is a period for sober reflection, adding that the verdict could not have been otherwise. So he's saying that essentially it was a fool's folly. It was a necessary folly that Peter Obi and Atiku Abubakar embarked upon, but essentially, substantially, and ultimately a fool's folly, because it was never going to end anywhere else other than where it has ended. And the SAN explains. On his part, Ebun Olu Adegboruwa SAN said it is a period for sober reflection, adding that the verdict could not have been otherwise. According to him, the verdict of the presidential election court was not totally unexpected, given the stark realities facing us as a nation and the state of the law. The principles of presumption of regularity of elections and that of substantial conformity makes it extremely difficult to prosecute elections successfully. In this particular case, the burden placed upon the petitioners in order to overturn the election was practically insurmountable. To make matters worse, INEC practically fought the petitioners to a standstill, as if it was an interested party in the whole process. So INEC has to be adversarial because, of course, their work. Because, by the way, the case filed, the whatever it is that was filed, the petition filed with the tribunal, excuse me, pardon me, let me see if I've got some water here. Right. The petition filed by the petitioners named INEC, APC, Tinubu Shetima, as their opponents, just to use lay words, because I can't find the legal word at the moment. So essentially, the petitions filed by the petitioners was against INEC, APC, Bola Tinubu, and Kashim Shettima. So of course, the Independent National Electoral Commission must necessarily be adversarial because they are being sued. Do you get? So I'm not quite sure what Ebun Adeorua or something like that is saying in this particular instance. Yes, it says that in this particular case, the burden placed upon the petitioners in order to upturn the election was practically insurmountable. To make matters worse, INEC practically fought the petitioners to a standstill, as if it was an interested party in the whole process. Well, it was an interested party. It was sued to court. I honestly don't think anyone expected a different verdict from what was delivered in Abuja today. Particularly the lawyers. The tension was completely unnecessary. This is why we emphasize always that the focus of anyone hoping to birth a new change in our electoral history should be on the electoral umpire without first unbundling INEC to make it more independent, non-partisan and effective. Anyone declared winner will most often coast to victory in the election tribunal. Today's verdict, and by the way, I don't maybe that might well be historically, but in this instance, the people that the person rather that the people voted for, the law defends that mandate. So Tinubu won the election, and the INEC declared him the winner, and the courts have affirmed it. So maybe as a broader philosophical talking area or a malaise to be addressed, then yes, but not applicable in this particular instance. This is why we emphasize always that the focus of anyone hoping to birth a new change in our electoral history should be on the electoral umpire without first unbundling INEC to make it more independent, non-partisan, and effective. Anyone declared winner will most often coast to victory in the election tribunal. Today's verdict should be a reason for sober reflection by all, especially the parties in court, their lawyers, and all lovers of democracy. The petitions could have been decided purely on points of law and within a few days of the election. Uh, There can be no real victory in the resolution of the legal issues by the court when the fabric of our democratic engagement seem to have been hijacked and compromised. Part of the lesson in this process is for us to go back and review the electoral process and the litigations following it. INEC, as it is presently constituted, cannot birth any credible election in Nigeria. In all, may in all, may in all, maybe there was too much expectation that the status quo will be upturned, whereas many of the principles of law canvassed had long been settled by the apex court. So, whereas you see, this is again going to that space, you have all these empty heads that come on our platform sometimes, led by the biggest empty head of all, Pansat, are going on Google to tell us that this is what Google said and this is what our Google did not say. It says that where many of the principles of law canvassed had long been settled by the apex court. So that matter of Abuja is a principle of law that have been settled by the apex court. As far back as 2-3 years ago, Falana was telling us that the constitution has it that for the purposes of election and other considerations, Abuja is to be considered as though it was one of the 36 states. And by that pronouncement and that constitutionality, to all intents and purposes, Abuja is the 37th state of Nigeria. So Abuja does not get any special status, and the indigenes of Abuja cannot have a deciding vote on who becomes the Nigerian president. Simple basic logic, of course, but then of course the raw meat eaters, they will have it otherwise. The cannibals will have it otherwise. So here's the last paragraph, and then we'll round it up. Or round it off. You know, I always hate when people say round it up, and I'm starting to pick up that language as well. You don't round it up, you round it off. OFF. I'm not quite sure. The English language has lost its whatever. Whilst encouraging all parties to continue in towing the path already defined by law for the ventilation of grievances, we owe Nigeria an urgent duty to dismantle INEC urgently, he added. So that is halfway obedient, halfway something or the other. Ebun Adegboruwa, whatever his name is, but there it is. So that's the submission. So what are you making of all that? I think that is a good summary of what's just transpired, and with that, what especially struck, and what the headline tells you everything, and you don't really need much more than the headline. PEPC judgment unassailable. You know, it cannot be reached, never mind surpassed. Unassailable, that's what that means. Thorough, you should know what thorough means, otherwise you should not be listening to me. And difficult to overturn. And that was encapsulated in that piece, and essentially reflects what just happened. So all eyes on the judiciary, all eyes on the judiciary, the budding eyes of the obedience on the judiciary. So all eyes on the judiciary. And by the way, let me play you this little clip on my way out. I'm about to shut it down, but let me play you this little clip on my way out. But this clip tells you that everything changes but remains the same. So this clip that I'm about to play you is a throwback to the 70s, and is exactly identical of what has just played out now. So let me play you this clip. This is Obafemi Awolowo.
Well, I mean, I'm not a gambler.
Well, according to the law, we have 14 days within which to file it. But we are not waiting for 14 days. When? Well, we file it between today and tomorrow.
Thank you very much. Well, the ball is in their court. They will meet us in the appeal court. I don't see them having any ghost of chance. If they want to waste their time and money, it's their business.
So you said that you really do not have any opposition in this case?
So the judgment is extremely sound, and one could not have hoped to get a better judgment.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are you optimistic?
How can I? It's not my way to give advance backing. If they appeal, they will beat us in the appeal court, the Supreme Court. The laws are clear, the facts are clear, and they know their case has no merit whatsoever. I mean, they are doing, if they appeal, they are not doing law now, they are doing politics.
And there it is right there. That was 1979, and you can transmute that and superimpose it on what's going on now. So everything is just as in 1979, so it is in as in 1979 rather, so it is in 2023. Everything is just corn and beans. So everything is just corn and everything rather. Sorry, I'm trying to lie. So everything is just corn and beans. Agbado. And there it is right there. All eyes on the judiciary, Agbado, Ewa, and peace.